Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey.
Got this dislike ratio. I make a video praising the Soviet Union and nobody bats an eye. You wanna know how I got this dislike ratio? I make a video praising the Soviet Union and nobody bats an eye. I make a video praising the United States and everybody loses their minds. Okay, fine. I hear you. You only want to hear things that...
I do... So, I'm not... Look, I don't know enough about communism to say I don't like it, but I don't like it. I feel like people nowadays are like it. I feel like we're getting to the point where it's not edgy anymore to say America bad, communism, hey, that could work. Like that's not edgy anymore. And so since it's not edgy anymore, then it's kind of weird when people now think like Soviet Union, a lot of people, all right? I'm not saying everyone. Soviet Union, great place, all right? America, hell. And I like that we're out of the, hey, why do I keep saying that? My romantic view of American history has been shattered by you guys, okay? So I thank you for that. We've just been shattered over watching history videos and talking with people, right? America's not the good guy, okay? It's not the bad guy. I like my country. I would not live anywhere else, in my opinion. I would not rather. But now you have people acting like how patriotic Americans used to talk about America on the Soviet Union. Maybe you guys haven't been like in the same kind of holes in the internet that I've been in, and maybe you don't see it or don't care, which is reasonable. But, why am I talking? Just come on, let's go.
Confirm what you already believe. I get it. Let's talk about why Americans are stupid.
I stopped myself right there from going on a rant, and I'm proud.
There's a famous episode of the Jimberly Kimberly live show where clueless residents of Los Angeles fail to name a single country.
Is it South Africa?
Yeah, the country of Asia.
Greenland or Iceland or something.
Although these are no doubt cherry-picked, and I'm sure if you stood in a big city all day and shoved a camera in people's faces and asked them questions, you'd be able to find 3 minutes worth of people who couldn't answer on the spot.
Sure.
Miss, for $1, name a woman.
Name a woman?
Yeah.
But the stereotype that Americans are ignorant about the wider world is largely true. These people can't name a country because they don't care about other countries. 40% of Americans have a passport, compared to 66% of Canadians and 76% of Brits.
I'm in the 40%.
In 1994, it was only 10% of Americans. But that doesn't mean Americans have gotten more globe-trotting since then. It was because after an above-average episode of the news, it became mandatory to need a passport when entering Canada and Mexico. So it's fair to say that a very small percent of Americans will be leaving this corner of the world. As I said in a previous video, America has all you'd ever want geographically within her borders. Why go anywhere else? The foreign cultures, maybe?
Yeah, I feel like being surprised that an American has never left America is the same thing as if a European told you they never left Europe. But because Europe is made up of a lot of countries, then people assume it's just like, oh, you travel more. I don't like to defend the U.S. too much, and I feel like I'm doing that.
Americans don't care about that either.
What do I mean? I love it.
On the list of the highest grossing movies in the USA, you have to go all the way to 520th place to get a movie that isn't American. It's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, by the way. Couldn't even beat The Nutty Professor. Somebody please check up on Ang Lee. I think he might have killed himself. Neither do global affairs hold the average American's interest. When asked about the Kyoto Climate Accords, who the Taliban are, or who Nicholas Sarkozy is, Americans are woefully underinformed compared to other developed nations. In 2009, only half knew that last year's Olympics were held in Beijing. Oh, but of course, when asked to
Huh? This is a really new video. What do you mean last year?
name American celebrities, they had no trouble at at all. At the same time, we non-Americans are flooded with American culture. Some British people know more about American politics and history than their own.
Once you're dropped into the trench, depth, or the z-axis is...
It's Z-axis, you floppy-haired moron.
It took me so long to understand what Z was. It's because it's something that I didn't realize I heard until I knew the meaning. Because British people have a lot of slang and stuff. Whenever I heard Z, I was like, what did they just say? But I didn't think about it much, you know? And, yeah.
France had to pass laws banning radio stations from playing too much American music.
I love France.
There are only 2 countries in the world where Coca-Cola is not sold. Wait, scratch that. This journalist from Finland bought a Coke at a water park in Pyongyang in 2017. And what's this hiding in the background of somebody's holiday snaps at the National Hotel de Cuba? Look, you know something's up when remote tribesmen in the Amazon rainforest who don't even have electricity know who Michael Jackson is. Americans used to be quite well read. After the Second World War, Americans...
Guys, do you agree with this? I feel like the further you go back, I feel like celebrities back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe even 90s, right, were like celebrities, right? Like huge, big deal. Like, I feel like now there are like many tiers of celebrity. There's like, yeah, but back then it's like Michael Jackson, Madonna, the Beatles, actors like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like, let's go to a Schwarzenegger movie. What's it about? Who cares? Schwarzenegger's in it. Sylvester Stallone. Like, it feels like there aren't the same like huge celebrities. I mean, there's like Beyonce. I mean, politicians are extreme, like Trump, Obama, Biden, Putin, Xi Jinping. Like those are super, super famous people. But yeah, I guess right below that would be like LeBron James, Beyonce type, at least in the U.S. And then, yeah, do you know what I'm saying? I feel like celebrities were bigger celebrities decades ago.
Consumed 63% of all the newspapers in the world, and they...
Huh? Sorry, I gotta go back to...
Americans used to be quite well read. After the Second World War, Americans consumed 63% of all the newspapers in the world, and they used this to their advantage. In 1948, the newly formed United Nations created a list of human rights that all countries should strive to uphold. One area that Americans were particularly interested in was this one, Article 19.
Freedom of speech.
Everyone has the right to freedom of expression and opinion, and receive and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. What the USA wanted was a completely level playing field. Anyone,
unless we don't like it,
can buy any media from any other country. A global free market of ideas, released from the shackles of censorship. For if anyone can gain access to the truth, we cannot be marched into the same kind of ignorance and intolerance that characterized the Axis nations of the war. This is admirable. Freedom of speech is a core value of the United States and many other allied nations. But some delegates, like those from India, questioned the US's motives. If you believe in an equal access to information and culture, shouldn't you redistribute some of your media creating capacity to developing nations like ours, so that we have an equal opportunity to tell the world our stories? The Americans would not budge. Of course, they knew deep down that India was right.
Yeah, that's kind of a good point. I feel like if anyone comes to you and it's too good to be true, it probably is. It's like,
delegation to the convention was highly populated by journalists and media magnates. They knew that if countries couldn't afford their own news, they would be increasingly reliant on buying news from American wire companies like the Associated Press, which was good for both the media companies' profits, but also the US State Department, who would no doubt have been licking their lips at the prospect of 1 billion people reading news with a specific American spin on it. In 1944, the Associated Press sold news to 38 countries. Within 8 years, that had doubled to 70 countries. In the 1950s, around half of films shown in European and Asian cinemas were American, 2/3 in Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina. Which makes sense. Americans made grand technicolor films brimming with Hollywood sparkle because they could afford to. Whereas war-torn...
Yeah, I didn't notice that growing up. I didn't think about it. That I always figured like other countries had their own... Well, they do.
Europe,
there's Bollywood and...
impoverished Mexico, and nuclear-obliterated Japan were stuck making small-scale comedies to keep up morale. One of the most popular French movies in 40s France was 1949's The Big Day,
Jour
a
de
mostly
fête.
plotless movie where a whimsical French postman gets into wacky mischief in a quaint village.
So it's like the French Mr. Bean?
There just wasn't the money or resources for anything else. Hollywood captured the European public's imagination, and they wanted more. Why is it only a one-way street? Because while you can do or say whatever you want within the United States, the Constitution also says that the American government can regulate what goes in or out. During the Cold War, anything that might be considered communist propaganda could be seized by the post office and never delivered. Books or even souvenirs from communist countries, for example.
That's ridiculous. And one of the most hypocritical things I've ever heard. There's something more... I'm not saying that I enjoy communism. I would say no, I don't like communism. I'm still learning about it, okay? And I know it's... But there's something more annoying about countries that say they're open, but then secretly like this, like, no, not really, than countries who are just straight up dictatorships and just say it. Like that, I would rather live in the country like the US, but at least it's like, at least they're like not like, okay, I get the deal. Like you're filtering in the information. But when you say you're like, oh, I'm holier than thou, I'm America, and then you still do it, that really just kind of rubs, pisses me off.
Pamphlets criticizing US foreign policy. Immigration reached a low point in the early 70s, with only 4.7% of Americans being foreign-born, limiting Americans' interaction with different cultures. Obviously, it wasn't totally like North Korea. Plenty of foreign movies and music were allowed into the US. But the media that caught on was either already Americanized, or so plastically exotic that it doesn't really say anything about the culture where it's from. The Beatles were British, yes, but they got their start covering American rock and roll musicians. When John Lennon stepped out of line, the American government made sure that he knew it.
What do you mean?
British, yes, but they got their start covering American rock and roll musicians.
Anna, go to him.
When
I'm confused.
Yes, but they got their start covering American rock and roll musicians.
Covering, like... Oh, I'm so stupid. I thought he meant like they made songs that covered American things. No, that they were covered band for other... okay, sorry, I get it. Wow.
When John Lennon...
That went like right over my head.
...stepped out of line, the American government made sure that he knew it. Movies imported from Japan were mostly samurai flicks, and very few movies set in the modern day. The film Ikiru is widely considered the best Japanese film ever made, if you ignore people who have never felt the touch of a woman. But this existential drama about a...
Guys, I don't get it.
Ignore people who have...
I'm sorry. I like what you want to like, right? Like, I will never... No, whatever you enjoy watching, watch. I just don't get the anime craze. I don't get it. I don't get it. Why? Maybe because it's like foreign to me and I'm letting my own kind of prejudices get in the way, but I'm not saying that they're probably bad, but why are they so popular? I don't get it. I'm not an anime watcher.
Never felt the touch of a woman, But this existential drama about a depressed, lonely man was only given a limited release in California, and the poster was edited to feature a stripper who is only in the movie for like 1 minute. The narrow stream of European movies that made it into the USA came in the form of the...
Excuse me, what? Why?
1 minute. The narrow stream of European movies that made it into the USA came in the form of the French New Wave cinema, movies that were stylistically inspired by American films, but also so stuffy that few audiences would ever want to watch them anyway.
Qu'est-ce que ça peut te faire?
Stuffy.
Ça ne va pas, non?
Non, rien. Je voulais dire cette phrase avec une idée précise. Je ne savais pas quelle était la meilleure façon d'exprimer cette idée. Ou plutôt, je le savais. Mais maintenant, je ne sais plus.
This was further stifled by the Hays Code, a set of extremely strict regulations that were in place from 1934 to 1968. If you've ever wondered why old black and white films seem so dry, it's because of these rules. Some things that were completely banned from ever being shown in any film included bad guys winning. All movies had to end with the police outwitting the evil criminals or the criminals causing their own demise. Any nudity, even the silhouette of a booba, is an instant ban. Blood or dead bodies. When people get shot in old films, they usually just clutch the wound, but no actual blood is seen. Pointing a gun at somebody in the same frame. This is why guns are always held at waist height. Kissing for longer than 3 seconds. Guns are always
But you're still holding the gun, though.
held at waist height. Kissing for longer than 3 seconds.
Stop.
Interracial
Ban it. 0.04 seconds.
couples. White people as slaves. Interracial couples. White people as slaves. Criticism of religion or of any other country. Naturally, this prevented the more artistically liberal European films from being shown in American cinemas, and when they did get a US release, they were usually edited to remove the violence in movies and sex on TV.
That's terrifying. What is that? Eyes without a face.
US release. They were usually edited to remove the violence in movies and sex on TV to comply with the good old-fashioned values. At least until the rules were abolished in 1968 and replaced by the age rating system we have today. Even as the Cold War ended and the internet gave Americans unparalleled access to the rest of the world and all of human knowledge, they still preferred to hang out on a handful of American-made websites dominated by Americans. The insular culture of 20th century America has carried over to the 21st. Tightened border security after Septiembre Undécimo means foreign musicians can have a...
What did his shirt say?
Tightened
if it's not gay? If it's not gay... Oh, it's not gay if it's TSA.
After Septiembre Undécimo means foreign musicians can have a hard time getting visas. In 2002, the touring visa of a German orchestra was cancelled after it was discovered the cellist had a criminal record for shoplifting a pair of tweezers in 1991. When they tried again for a visa in 2004, the cellist had to undergo an hour-long interview with Homeland Security and had to physically pick up his visa from the US Embassy. Global cultures might be more present in American media.
No words.
But they're always through the lens of American characters, such as The Last Samurai starring Tom Cruise, where he plays a white guy in 1870s Japan.
It's essentially Dances with Wolves, but in Japan.
7 Years in Tibet, another American in China. Indiana Jones, American in Egypt. The Bourne Identity, American in France. Inglourious Bastards, Americans in German-occupied France. And for the ladies in the audience, Mamma Mia. For a movie set on a Greek island, there's not a single Greek person in the entire movie! Is there any hope for America, or are they destined to be a stinky, dumb, redneck country forever? Maybe. In 2000, 92% of the music in the USA Top 50 was American, making it the second most insulated market in the world after Pakistan. But today, it's more like 60%. With Brits, Canadians, Latin Americans, and Africans making themselves more seen in the charts.
I say this all the time because the amount of British bands, especially like rock, 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, rock, 90s to 2000, a lot of British bands, I can't really tell. I can't really notice the accent when they sing, when British or American people sing. It sounds very similar. And the amount of bands that I found out weren't even American is insane.
Each year, there are more foreign films nominated at the Academy Awards than ever before. What used to be an American-only pay-to-win awards show is now an international pay-to-win awards show. As social media platforms have an element of randomness in what they show users, there is a higher chance of Americans being shown videos from other countries, forcing them to take note of what is happening.
I think a lot of it has to do with that. Like the NBA is a good example. There are so many more European and African NBA players, right? It's not because we've just started to open exactly, right? But that other countries are getting really good at basketball. And so when America is really good at cinema for many, many decades, of course, regardless of any social, like xenophobic or, governmental censorship, regardless of that, as cinema gets better around the world, better quality, then of course it's going to show up.
It seems the countries forcing them to take note of what is happening. It seems the revolution will be TikToked. I've been giving the impression throughout this video that it's all or most Americans who are terminally uneducated. But American ignorance isn't as evenly distributed as you'd think. That study I mentioned earlier, when adjusting for English proficiency, income and education levels, Americans are really no different from their European counterparts, and in some cases marginally smarter. Knowledge about the wider world even correlates to political views, and not in the way that you'd think. A 2022, in some cases, marginally smarter.
Like, guys, Sarkozy sounds familiar, but I can't tell you who he is now.
Proficiency,
I probably should know.
Income and education levels, Americans are really no different from their European counterparts, and in some cases, marginally smarter. Knowledge about the wider world even correlates to political views, and not in the way that you'd think. A 2022 survey asked Americans 12 questions about the world, such as who is the British Prime Minister, what does the Indian flag look like, and what this symbol represents. The people who answered the most questions correctly were committed Democrats and committed Republicans. Swing voters, those enlightened centrist Chads, were the stupidest.
I mean, that makes sense when you think about it, because sometimes, I'd almost see swing voters as the dumbest and the dumbest and smartest. Like, either you're really smart that you're not able to be duped into the cult personality culture, like the cultish culture of politics, then you could be really smart and be an independent and be like, well, I don't identify fully with either party. Or you could be independent because you just don't know what the hell is going on, and so you don't want to pick one because I have no idea. You know what I mean?
Only 40% of moderate Republicans could name the U.S. Secretary of State.
Can I? Is that Blinken? Is that Anthony Blinken? I'm not even 100% sure I'm right.
Compared to 60% of convicted Republicans. Only half of moderate Democrats knew that the USMCA trade agreement replaced NAFTA, compared to 66% of convicted Democrats.
Yeah, I knew that. No, I knew that. I didn't.
Also, I just thought it was funny that the more Americans know about the European Union, the more favorable view they have of it. So are Americans ignorant? Many of them are, but it isn't their fault.
Actually, I've been watching a lot of EU videos recently. By the way, I love this guy's video. I'm going to go back 5 seconds. The more I learn about the EU, the more I realize, just how far off of you can't compare it to a country. It's so, the more I learn about it, the more I realize how sort of divisive it is in there. They have there's this position in there that they only need one person, but they have 28 because no single country wanted to be left out. So that kind of was like, wait, oh crap. But yeah, okay, all right.
So are Americans ignorant? Many of them are, but it isn't their fault. It's a mix of geography, American imperialism, Cold War paranoia, moral puritanism, and economic factors that create a paradoxical nation that is both the most expansive empire, but also an informational prison of their own making. God bless you, stupid bastards.
Guys, I love that video, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. I don't think there's a single thing that he said that I disagree with. Some of it I just don't know enough to agree or disagree, but with a title that's like How Americans Got So Stupid, it was extremely reasonable. So I'm going to subscribe and everything, and thumbs up. I thought that was really good. Love you guys. Hope you're all doing well. I would appreciate any and all comments, guys. Don't hold back. I don't care. Okay. I have opinions. Okay. But I try to not be solid in them. So if you disagree with anything I said, please, I'd almost, I'd appreciate that more than someone who's just agreeing, But I loved all your comments. I would love to see them. Hope you guys are doing well. See you next time. Bye.